Good morning, jurors. This thesis explores the possibility of looking at a traditional Buddhist monastery, especially in the region of Ladakh, hence the name Reinterpreting a Ladakhi Monastery. I would like to begin with a quote of His Highness the 14th Dalai Lama. He says, "No matter how attractive a traditional rural society may seem, its people cannot be denied the opportunities of modern development." Now, let us begin with what are monasteries. Monasteries defined as a building occupied by a community of monks living under religious vows. A Buddhist monastery in India is generally termed as a vihara. However, in the regions of Ladakh and Tibet, it is termed as a gompa. A brief introduction to Ladakh. It is defined as a high altitude cold desert, which makes it one of the coldest inhabited places and also one of the places receiving the highest amount of solar radiation in India. Now, a question arises as to why are monasteries important to the region of Ladakh. Monasteries are always understood as religious centers, but in this region, monasteries play many roles, like it was a fortress for a settlement. It has been the center for learning for Buddhist monks who in turn pass on the knowledge to the laity. It has been the home for monks and nuns. It used to be a seat of power with acres of land in its account, and also locals used to go and settle their disputes. Monasteries acted as banks which lent loans to the locals in the form of grains, cattle, fields to plow. Monasteries acted as a museum by preserving cultural and religious artifacts apart from the traditional forms of art. Apart from all of these, most importantly, monasteries have been community centers where people were brought together for various festivals, events, and fairs throughout the year. Therefore, we can summarize as monasteries are not just religious centers, but they acted as active representatives of Ladakhi culture. Now, let us look at the present status of Ladakh. The name Ladakh means land of passes, and owing to its geographical location amidst high mountains, it stayed isolated for a large period of time. It was an agrarian society. However, today, owing to things like tourism, urbanization, and migration, construction of roads have influenced the landscape of Ladakh, and hence it is accessible to the world like never before. Monasteries, which were once the sole magnets of a community in the region of Ladakh and for the settlements, uh, they have lost their cultural relevance owing to the change in lifestyle of people. Now, in a stage where Ladakh is in the threshold of modern and traditional systems, there is a need for a cultural icon which instills a sense of pride in the locals. In doing so, there are a few challenges. First one being the need for redefining and reviving the role and function of monasteries. Second, they need to be valued not only for their. To understand monasteries better, case studies of Dankar Monastery in the Lahore Spiti region of Himachal Pradesh, Thigse Monastery in the region of Ladakh, and Hemis Monastery in the region of Ladakh were done. The overall inferences from these case studies can be divided into site level inferences, building level inferences, and other functional inferences. At the site level, terrain and setting play an important role. Monasteries are always placed on a slopy terrain or hillock. The site chosen is always higher than the settlement. The orientation towards south plays an extremely important role owing to the extreme climatic conditions. The north side is usually blocked by the hills, and the south side is left free for maximum southern exposure. At building level, we have four kinds of spaces which can be seen. The sacred spaces marked in orange, the social spaces which are marked in brown. These social spaces are for monks and nuns. Then we have common areas or public spaces for festivals, which include courtyards. Then we have residential spaces for the monks to reside in. Some of the basic components of monastery are Dukhang, the prayer hall. This is how a typical prayer hall would look. It is a colonnaded space. Then we have a deity, main deity, which is worshipped there, and monks pray at regular intervals of the day. Then we have Lakhang. Lakhang is the main temple dedicated to primary single deity. Then we have the Chansa or the kitchen, the Guru Lakhang, the library where sacred scriptures are kept, Takshaks, the monks' quarters, and multiple courtyards with one main one for monastic festivals. Building materials include adobe blocks, which are called as pabbu, poplar wood, and ramdar. When the outer facade blends with the landscape, the interiors are quite colorful and vibrant. Functional inferences or observations include that there is a sense of phenomenology in the spaces. As we can see in the illustrations, there is a play of light and shadow, volumes, and image and position of the deity, which play an important role in the way we experience the spaces. Another inference is with regards to the public spaces. Since monasteries host a lot of monastic events and festivities throughout the year, owing to tourism and increase in population, there is a need for larger gathering spaces. Apart from these, there are elements of Ladakhi architecture to be noted. First thing is the prayer wheels. They come in different sizes as shown in the picture. There is a belief that circumambulating and spinning around this in clockwise direction is equivalent to chanting mantras. Then there is the presence of stupas, which can be seen throughout the landscape of Ladakh. It resembles a tomb for a revered person. The There is Mane wall, which is a long wall with the piles of stone with engravings of the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. Then we have the prayer flags, which come in different forms of vertical poles and horizontal, as shown in the picture here. Apart from these, there are characteristics of Ladakhi architecture. The first one being the Ka and Kaju, the pillar and capital combination, which is very common and a must in the Ladakhi architecture. Then we have Rabsar, which is nothing but balconies. Then we have Sinchak, which is the window bands, um, uh, uh, which are there for all the buildings in Ladakh. Then we have the skylight or lantern. Then we also have dry composite toilets, which are a necessity in the region where there is scarcity of water. Since we are talking about monasteries being cultural centers, a few cases of contemporary cultural centers were done. The Tejibao Cultural Center and the Dakshina Chitra were taken into consideration. Also, a comparative case study was done and inferred that the program of a cultural center and a monastery are quite similar in ways. Um, Both have community spaces, both promote traditional art forms and local culture, both play a role in imparting local knowledge and skills to the community, both hold cultural events and programs for the upliftment of the community. Therefore, a monastery can be referred to as a cultural center for present Ladakh. Another inference is that since monastery is already an essential part of the Ladakhi culture and indigenously developed typology, it won't be seen as a foreign element and the people will be able to relate and connect with it better. After case studies, we next see the need to understand Ladakh as a site for the project at different levels. First one, the range of altitude. It is from 2,500 meters to 7,700 meters above sea level. It receives the highest amount of solar radiation in India, and the summer months are from June to September for 4 months, and winter is for 8 months. The maximum temperature during summer is 35 degrees Celsius, and during winter it goes down till minus 40 degrees Celsius. All the river systems are glacier fed, and the precipitation is meager with very sparse vegetation. Here is a glimpse of the region of Ladakh during summer and a typical landscape during winter. Before selecting the site, certain criteria were set, and accordingly, the site of Sakti, the village of Sakti, was chosen. The village of Sakti is located about 47 kilometers from the capital city of Leh. It has a population of about 1,720 people, and it lies in the tourist circuit on the way to Pangong Lake and also Warila. The site is about 19 acres in area. The difference between the highest contour and lowest contour is about 150 meters. Various aspects were analyzed, including climate, orientation, topography, and visual value. Since we are talking about imparting a sense of civic pride and uh, uh, cultural value to the monastery, it has to be placed accordingly and should have an impacting effect on the people. Also important is the topography, which gives a characteristic feature to all forms of Ladakhi architecture. There were three user groups identified: monks and nuns, locals and the tourists. Monks from the region of Ladakh. They are a part of three Ratnas of Buddhist tenet of Dharma, Sangha, and Buddha, and people share a connect with them. Monks are not only taught religious scriptures, prayer, and meditation, but also the art of sand mandala, the art of dance, traditional dance, especially mass dance, the art of stone carving. Their curriculum includes astrology, traditional medicine, language, and mathematics, apart from uh, traditional scriptures and prayers. Lifestyle of Ladakhis is based purely on seasons and can be divided as summer and winter activities. Summers are quite hectic with attention towards agriculture, tending to tourists and construction activities. But the winters are much leisurely with no agricultural activity, and it's filled with monastic festivals and events which keep them engaged. Tourism in Ladakh can be divided into nature tourism, cultural tourism, and adventure tourism. Therefore, going to design program a few pre-programmed studies of Novelinka Art Institute in Dharamsala, National Ceremonial Plaza, Thimphu, Bhutan, and Famine Zen Meditation Center in China, Verdun. National Ceremonial Plaza was studied to understand the sense of civic architecture. Famine Zen Meditation Center studied to understand the integration between modern intervention with a village setup. The other inferences regarding the spatial quality is that there is a sense of loss of essence in the spaces due to modern interventions. As we can see in this picture, the natural light enhances the quality of space, whereas in this picture, it has been diminished. Also, in the subsequent pictures, we can see the effect of. Keeping in mind our initial points of place for all, establishment of cultural relevance, and bringing a sense of balance in the sacredness and contemporariness, the design program speaks about three zones: sacred zone, residential zone, and public zone. The sacred zone includes prayer hall, temples, and kitchen, dining hall, courtyard, library for the temple complex, office space, and multipurpose hall, amphitheater, and an awards residence. It also includes meditation rooms, and dry toilets are also proposed. The public square, local market, cafes, restaurant, souvenir shop, and other temporary shops form a part of public zone. The major part of public zone is taken by Skill Development Center, which includes reception, workshop spaces for promoting traditional art forms like tanka, metal carvings, clay sculpting, wood carving, and stone carving. There are also classrooms, auditoriums, and auditorium, library, and a computer center in the Skill Development Center. The residential zone includes senior accommodation of monks and nuns, junior accommodation of monks and nuns, novice accommodation of monks and nuns, and also guest accommodation with a separate dining and kitchen. The total area comes up to around 8 acres. Before zoning, a priority chart was conceived for the limitation and scope of the project. The major focus of the project is public zone and sacred zone. There are a few sketches of design strategies which were a result of analyzing the priority chart. The zoning was majorly based on hierarchy and priority of spaces, keeping in mind the character of the terrain too. The possible usage of material and techniques being rammed earth and other forms of mud, a grid system was considered which would help to optimize the construction process. Zoning in terms of 2D would not be enough in a setting like Ladakh. Volumes play an important role, hence massing studies were done for the proposal. Here is an example of Layer Palace, which appears to be one solid mass from outside. But when we take a tour inside, we see that the mass is a combination of multiple terraces and courtyards, balconies, and narrow corridors. Therefore, we can see these examples in typical monasteries too. Therefore, smaller volumes stacked and staggered in combinations add to a solid mass of structures. These are some of the 3D massing and zoning of the site proposals and study and analysis regarding them. A few, and finally, a view of final massing in comparison with a typical monastery. Now, the design section, coming to the site plan. A key plan shows us that there is an existing road in the bottom portion of the site. However, there are two roads proposed as a deviation from the existing road, one leading to the lower half of the site, opening to a village plaza, and the other on the upper part of the site, opening to the sacred zone. There are three access points. One is the pedestrian entry, the second is the vehicular entry for parking, the third is the entry towards the sacred zone. An overview of the project would be the sacred zone on the topmost part, including the amphitheater, sacred library, the senior nuns' cells, the temple of Maitri Buddha, prayer hall, and senior monks' hostel. The second part is about the skill development center. The third is the uh, hostels and dormitories of junior monks and nuns. Next comes the village plaza, which is along with the statue of Buddha over a museum overlooking the water body and the valley in the opposite direction. Let us begin our journey from the lower half. As we approach the pedestrian entry to mark the entrance to the monastic complex, we have three stupas placed at this junction. The pedestrian entry opens out to a village plaza, which is abutted by the water body and statue of Buddha on one side. And to the opposite, we can see the entrance to the monks and nuns' dormitories. And towards the north, we have the skill development center. Walking across which we get the reception, souvenir shop, computer center, and other workshops, guest hostel, and classrooms. As we move further up, we have the junction between the uh, skill development center and the sacred zone. Moving further up, we enter the sacred zone by crossing across a stream which opens out to an amphitheater. This water body is sourced from an ice stupa, which is nothing but a conical structure which stores water in the form of ice during winters and melts during summers. The entrance to the sacred zone is marked by the presence of water body in order to provide a sense of purification and sanctity. As we move further up from the amphitheater, we have the courtyard which opens out to the prayer hall and sacred library. And moving further up, we have the temple of Maitreya Buddha. On the opposite sides, on the either sides of the axis, we have senior monks cells and the senior nun cells. That was an overview in terms of plan. Let us see a section across the longest axis of the site. Here we can see the temple complex of Maitreya Buddha on the topmost part. Then comes the courtyard with the prayer hall and sacred library. And then as we go further down, we have the amphitheater, the junction between the sacred zone and the skill development center, which has a stupa. Then also we have the village plaza in the bottom part, overlooking the Buddha, which in turn is overlooking the valley and a water body. This is a section cut across the longest side of the site. Few important points to be noted in the site plan are orientation of blocks. In the Passive Solar architecture, as research says, the orientation of a building in the range of 0 to 15 degrees due east or west of the true south is most effective, and the range is still effective up to 30 degrees. Therefore, owing to extreme climatic conditions, terrain of the site, function of the blocks, the residences face true south and other blocks lie in the prescribed range. Secondly, the usage of mud in the proposal, since mud has higher values of thermal mass and insulation and also local in nature. Proposal of ice stupa and dry toilets in the site pertaining to the water scarcity in the region. Then we have the large public gathering spaces, as we have inferred. There are a number of courtyards throughout the site, including a plaza in the lower part. There is also a water body which doubles up as an ice hockey rink during winters, since ice hockey is a local sport. Moving to the zones in detail, first the upper entrance and the amphitheater. As discussed earlier, the entrance to the amphitheater is marked by a water body, over which a bridge moves in order to give a sense of purification and sacredness. Since monastic festivals attract a lot of people, the amphitheater can accommodate about 3,000 to 3,500 people at a time. There is also a multi-purpose hall um, uh, attached with this, which can host exhibitions and serve as a community gathering space, and so on. Let us look at the sections cut across this axis and this axis. In this section, we can see that the courtyard is surrounded by semi-open colonnaded spaces, which helps to gain an aerial view of the events. Also, we can see the kitchen on top of the multipurpose hall. We can also see the musicians' pavilion and other pavilions in the section. The second section shows the entrance stupa, prayer wheels on the bridge. Then we move across and we see the uh, pavilion for musician monks during events, and also a green room below it for uh, the convenience of performers. As we move up towards the amphitheater, um, and then move further up, we access a courtyard surrounded by prayer hall and library. And further up, we have another courtyard and a temple complex. We'll look at the Maitreya Buddha temple. The Maitreya Buddha temple, as we can see in the section, to evoke a sense of darshan or respect and humbleness in the devotee, he sees the foot of the deity first, and as he climbs up, he can see the face. Surrounding the temple is the circumambulatory path. Also, in the section, we can see the elevation of the prayer hall complex. We now look at the prayer hall. It is a colonnaded space of 55 by 20 meters. This leading from inside is a courtyard with temples of female deity Tara and temple of Avalokiteshvara. The deities face the eastern direction. The upper part of the complex is the prayer hall. The lower part become the monks' cells. Keeping in mind the local style of architecture, structural need, and to break the monotony, there are two wide bays which are protruded, which act as buttresses. In the section, we get an idea of the site terrain and interiors of the prayer hall. Let us climb down the monastic complex and look at the public zone. The entrance to the public zone is through a pedestrian entrance which opens out to a lower plaza. The view might look something like this, where the entrance is via an entrance stupa gate and opens out to a large courtyard overlooking the Buddha statue on the right side and the water body, along with the view of valley on the right side. And to the left, we have the entrance to Skill Development Center. As we move across the Skill Development Center, there are workshops and spaces done to accommodate activities like clay sculpting, metal carving, sand mandala art, anka painting, wood carving, and stone carving. We have reception, souvenir shop, library, computer center, and workshops with spill out spaces. There are pavilions and terraces planned to give viewpoints and as points. Then we have the classrooms and the auditorium. Let us understand the auditorium space is spanned with the help of portal frames and wooden truss to support it structurally. To understand in section, all the workshops follow a model wherein we can see that there are three levels. One for the beginners, which is provided with an airlock, which has an entrance through an airlock. Airlock is used for insulation, so when there is frequent movement of people. Then the second level is for group activities, which also has an in charge office along with the storage. Then we have the third level, which is for advanced courses. Workshops and even activities like tanka painting, sculpture, metal have activities where one has to sit down on floor. Hence, the windows are placed with lower sills to gain maximum light and also to connect with the outside. The south side walls are made up of trom wall. In the section, we can see that it is a combination of multiple levels and terraces, combination of enclosed and semi-enclosed spaces. There is an attempt to make all the roof accessible, all the roofs of the blocks accessible so that they act as pause points and viewpoints overlooking the Buddha statue and the valley beyond. These terraces and the pavilions also act as small informal gathering spaces which add to the vibrance of the place. This section especially represents the relationship between the Skill Development Center, the village plaza, and the Buddha statue with the water body. Finally, we look at some of the construction details and views. Here we see the system used for rammed earth. Rammed earth wall is 60 centimeters thick with two layers of rammed earth on either sides with an insulation in between of 10 centimeters. Then we have the Tromy wall system, which works on the principle of currents and thermal mass. There are three parts to this. One, there is it is a combination of three important things: glazing, double glazing, then thermal blocks and openings. The air gets heated up due to the presence of glass, and it enters the space via the upper part of the uh, upper hole on the in the wall, thermal block wall. Then the cold air comes down from the bottom opening and again he gets heated up. The room is kept warm throughout due to the thermal insulation provided by thermal blocks. The lintel system used is there are two blocks of CSE, that is compressed stabilized earth blocks, and in between runs RCC pipe. Then we have traditional roof and floor systems. The roof system is was traditionally completely out of wood and earth, but here we have used bitumen wash and tar felt for waterproofing. And then we have the floor system where there are layers of clay blocks, silt and gravel used to provide better insulation. Here is a view of realization how it might look during summers, and then in the winters. So to conclude, if we were to go back to what the Dalai Lama, His Highness the Dalai Lama said, yes, people of rural society or any society should not be denied the opportunities of modern development, but it has to be made sure that the development happens in a way to complement our roots, our culture, rather than overpowering them. This project is an attempt to bridge the gap between the past values and modern requirements of the present day Ladakh. Thank you.